Hello, it's Randy again with USA to Everywhere. This is episode 2 of our business series, and if you remember last week, or if you go back to episode 1, you will see everything that we had on there, 5 or 6, 7, I forget how many there were, but one of the things that I needed to change was your thinking. So that's what we're hitting today, and what's real crucial is going from your learned thinking, which means that all of the thinking that you've been taught, either in school, through your family, however you have your thought processes now, if you want to be more successful, you got to change it. So you want to go from your learned thinking to critical thinking and also to strategic thinking. So your learned thinking, a lot of that is your biases. People telling you that this may not be a good idea, but if you do your research and you look at it and you say, it makes sense to me, Facebook was a good idea to the Winklevoss twins, and then Zuckerberg came in with some other people, but even Zuckerberg didn't think it was going to be as big as it ended up being. I forget the guy's name, but the third guy who was involved was basically this, he was the guy who started Napster. Forget his name, but he was the guy who really took it to another level. But all along, other people were saying, "Oh, it's for colleges or whatever they had." But so it was learned thinking, which really is what holds you back. It's not thinking out of the box, not thinking more strategically, more critically on things, and basically relying on your judgment. Well, now some of you guys may be thinking, well, you know, my judgment has been pretty bad in the past. Well, then that's where you really need to go from your learned thinking, it's like learned behaviors, to actually thinking more strategically and more critically. Trust the numbers. So business is all about numbers. If you want to go from $50 a day to $100 a day to $1,000 a day, it's all increments of some mathematical number. But getting over your learned behavior, your learned thinking, to think outside the box, that's a big step for a lot of people. But so let's step over to going to critical thinking. Critical thinking is really looking at things more objectively and taking your emotions out of it. And what's really key to sustaining a business is that you need to think critically all the time, but in the very beginning, critical thinking gets you to operational excellence, and that's no matter what it is. If it's operations on how you're doing sales, your accounting, how you're going after business, it's the process steps that you have to be critical and thinking of how we should actually operate the business. It's the foundation of your business is getting the operational excellence and the business development. All of those steps, all of those processes are something that has been going on in business for 100 years. Modern business is pretty much all the same. I'll keep on saying it. Doesn't matter what country you live in or where you're at, all the basis of business is the same. Basics are basics everywhere. And so that comes down to business survival. The critical thinking is really what gives you business survival. So when you're starting a business, it's so important. It's always that way to continue your business. But if you're in survival mode and startup mode, critical thinking equals business survival. Likewise, once you start having your base down, then you need to get to strategic thinking. And strategic thinking is the next new thing and developing leaders. So you have to have a vision. You've got to be playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. You've got to be 5 steps ahead, 5 moves before they even think about where you're at. Just today, I had a couple of meetings that could be real crucial to really changing our business. Another step ahead, actually, it's probably 20 moves ahead of what our competitors are doing. I'm not saying that to be cocky or be arrogant, but I know nobody's thought about this. And so if we can get this through and it works, we could really dominate more than the areas that we're already doing. So that's our next new thing. And to do that, we need to develop more leaders within our organization, because as we grow, you want to have your culture thinking the way you do. Not because they agree with everything you do, because if you just have people around you saying, oh yeah, great, you're the greatest, eventually it's going to catch up to you. You may get to another level, but you need to have people telling you things that you don't want to hear. You don't have to listen to everything, but you need to take the advice. So develop leaders that think like you, and have everybody on the same path. When you get strategic thinking, that's where you get your exponential growth. That's the rocket ship that you get on and take the ride. But you need both. You've got to have the critical thinking. Think of like an accountant. You got to be a numbers guy. The numbers always have to add up before you do anything. But strategic thinking, that's kind of like your wish list. It's the goals that you have. And you can have really big goals, but I think it's always better to have goals, graduated steps, but always be shooting for the big one. All right? Very, very basic stuff. When you're saying, how do I get there? There are a lot of books. There's a lot of things on the internet that you have to pay for that I don't think you have to learn the strategic thinking, the critical thinking. But most of it still comes down to what I have here on the to-do list for you again. More homework. But I touched on this last episode or the last video we did, to really look inside, in the mirror. You got to look at yourself and say, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And that also goes right back to the critical thinking, strategic thinking, because there are accountant type people that really grow big businesses, and they aren't very good at sales, but they're good at hiring people. They know to hire and put the best people in the best positions for their company to grow. So sales is that's the engine that drives every single company, but you don't have to be a sales guy if you know that you can hire somebody. That's where you analyze your strengths and weaknesses. What doesn't work is when you are the accountant mindset and you don't have the pizzazz, you don't have the drive to do sales, because you strike out in sales way more than you're successful. And you don't realize that, but you're trying to put yourself in positions that you're not. So that really comes down to your personal strengths and weaknesses. So no matter what, I know I'm harping on this a little bit more than people may appreciate, but if you're not completely honest with yourself on how you want to run the business, what your strengths and weaknesses are, it's not going to go to where it needs to be. Okay, and then number 2, identify a leading business in your area. So whatever line of business you're in, whatever you are looking forward to be doing or to take your business to the next level, look at what somebody's already doing successful. We do it all the time, and quite frankly, our business grows when we have competition in another area. We're looking at opening up El Salvador in the next couple of weeks. We had a Zoom meeting with a guy today, and one of the first questions I asked was, what do we have there for competition? And there's one company that's dominant there, and I asked him, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses? So he told me, fantastic. Our business grows every time we can do something better than the big company. So at this point, we're always David taking on Goliath. And Goliath is so much bigger, we know that we can do a bunch of things better. And so I think we're going to do really good in that market when we open up there. So number 3 on the to-do list for next time is already start thinking in your current business and in your future business, or if you're looking for that next new thing, you want to do a SWOT evaluation. And when you do a business plan, and we'll get into the a business plan and then narrowing it down to just a one page that you look at quite frequently, you're going to do the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So as I already put in, look at your personal strengths and weaknesses. Now for your business, and this is real key, you should have quite a list. Try to do at least 10 strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strength of your business, maybe one of them is you can do things less expensively than your competition, but you can bring a higher service. So that's a strength. Weakness is maybe you don't have the staffing that you need to go up against so-and-so. These are just examples. And then the opportunities. What is the monetary opportunity that you think that you can go after? If it's a niche, what do you want to take out of that sliver? What is a sliver that you're going after going to be worth to you? And actually identify specifically what that opportunity is and what that niche is. So if you're selling auto parts, maybe you can get air filters a higher quality, less expensively to distribute than everybody else. But the threat is everybody can order online if they know your source. You know, that's how you do the strengths and weaknesses. And it's also very key to completely be honest. You're going to find that a lot of your strengths are, people patting you on the back that you do a great thing. And what some people view as a weakness, say, being relentless. Now, my wife will attest to this, where that's either a really big strength or it can be a real big weakness. Because last video when I said that you may bang your head against a wall on something over here, you need to pivot to do something else because this line is not going to be successful. You're not going to make it there. But if you just change a little bit and you pivot, well, that's going to be where you want to be. But one day, I was working on something for about 3 months, a big project that, because I don't have a problem thinking big, but I was looking for this huge project that we were working on for a long time, proposal after proposal, meeting after meeting, 3 months. And when it came down to them making the decision, they went with somebody else. Tossed me aside, went with somebody else who I still to this day think they made a mistake on it. But I was on to the next new thing, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, I was working from my home office, and my wife came, and one of the nicest things she ever said was, she just patted me on the back as she was going back to bed and said, "You are relentless." So that's a real strength. Be a bulldog, never give up. But I think in a lot of times that's been one of my biggest weaknesses because I won't give up. If I think it's going to make sense, then I keep going and I keep going. And I'll give you another example. I actually had patents on a, totally different from this business, but I had patents on a process to turn garbage into a compost, 3 to 5 days. And to this day, I love the concept. There's garbage all over the place, but economically, most places will not pay to actually do that. Even if I can show that there's a return on investment, somebody still has to dig in their pocket. And I was told by a big garbage company, hey, we make our money by digging a big hole, filling it as fast as we can, digging another hole, filling it as fast as we can. So that's the mindset. And they claim to be a green company. But so I worked on one project alone, probably about 7 years. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. Nothing happened on it before I finally put it off to the burner. I still keep stoking the fires a little bit because I'll have somebody contact me, but to me that's kind of a passion play on my point, just because I like doing it. So it turned out to be an expensive hobby. But so being relentless isn't always good, but neither is being a quitter. So anyway, I hope I explained this and this in a little better detail. If you have any questions, you can contact me at randy.robida at teamww.com. So until next time, salute.